make sure you find us on YouTube. If you're watching this show on video, any of our video offerings, it's all coming to an end, bro. You gotta find us on YouTube, bro. Brother. The Monty Show. M-O-N-T-Y, The Monty Show on YouTube. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. I'm thirsty. I'm begging you. It helps the channel grow, and the channel is growing exponentially. It has been a meteoric rise, similar to the GameStop stock swap short. No, it hasn't. But make sure you follow us on YouTube, The Monty Show. M-O-N-T-Y, The Monty Show. Hit subscribe. Give us a thumbs up on that video. That would be amazing. A week from Friday, we will end our Periscope live streaming. So a week from Friday, our shows will no longer be on Periscope. We're doing that because we have, now established ourselves on YouTube, and it is time for you to make the switch to the greatness. So that we may grow and thrive and make plenty of money off of you watching our show. So, well, I mean, he ain't wrong. I would encourage you to subscribe on YouTube, The Monty Show, M-O-N-T-Y, The Monty Show. And, of course, if you listen to this podcast, thank you so much. Our download numbers on the audio portion of the podcast are incredible as well. Just search The Monty Show wherever you get a podcast. So, I really want to talk... I do want to talk Jazz. I do. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to talk about GameStop and day trading. Mm-hmm. So give me 10 minutes, and then we're going to talk about that. The Jazz win last night, their 9th straight. Austin Rivers was a first-half juggernaut for the Knicks. He scored 25 points, I believe, on 10 of 10 shooting.
Yeah.
And then never was heard from again in this game. Jake, are the Jazz now elite?
I mean, no. The NBA is streaky,
No.
right? Like, the Jazz are not an elite team. We've been over this, right? We've had this conversation, and it seems like every day someone on Twitter who's a Jazz fan is like, hey, we've won 9 in a row. We're going to win 10 in a row tonight. And it's like, no, at some point that's going to come to an end. And look, I mean, listen, they could finish first in the West. Maybe I'm just a moron and I'm an idiot and don't know basketball, but I'm just telling you right now, my opinion is that they're not a good enough team to continue doing this. Again, what's gonna happen here is they're gonna continue the win streak until tonight when they play a back-to-back against Dallas and get their ass handed to them, because that's all we know that's coming. So when that happens, then the conversation is going to change, and then we're going to be talking about how they were tired and how Porzingis beat up on Rudy a little bit, and how Luka put up 40 against the Jazz, and people are going to be all pissed off. And that's how this team works, man. You go on, you win 9 in a row, then you're going to lose a couple, and then the world's going to fall, and then they're going to start winning again. So to me, it's all those same issues, like consistency, not having enough firepower to match up with teams that are really elite offensively. So, no, I don't think they're elite. I do think they're very good.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how this team develops. They are living and dying on the three. The three ball did not go in the first half last night against the Knicks. They were able to overcome that, and I think we've seen this with a lot of teams. I think we've certainly seen this with the Suns, who at times go three ball happy, but you see when teams like the Suns, the Jazz, look at the Washington Wizards, don't call us Bullets.
Yeah.
When Bradley Beal has a game like he had last night and he's leading the NBA in scoring.
And he's crying on the bench because they lost by 25.
Because Russell Westbrook shot 3 straight air balls at one point, including a layup. This league has turned into a 3-point league, and I totally get that. The Jazz are heavily reliant on the three ball. They win when they make it. They're going to lose when they don't. And they almost showed us that last night against the Knicks. Luka and the Mavs are coming in. And if they are healthy, look out, because that allows them to start Kristaps Porzingis at center. And I think against the Jazz, that is a recipe for disaster for the Jazz. If Porzingis is playing center, I just don't see that Rudy Gobert has a role in this game, because it's going to be very difficult for Rudy to hang with Porzingis on the perimeter.
Yeah, and the problem is Favors isn't exactly the best matchup either, because he's significantly shorter than Porzingis is, and that's really that's really the awesome thing about Porzingis when he's healthy. He's a dominant player. And so, yeah, I'll be really curious to see how they work with that because I think it is tough.
I don't know. Last night was certainly one of Royce O'Neal's better performances. Certainly him making a three makes him a different player. Bogdanovich shot the ball well. Obviously, Donovan got his in the second half. But I think what we're seeing is that they're improving. And they are a team that, when everything is firing well, they're very good. The Jazz are very difficult to deal with.
Right.
I just don't know how you continue this momentum going forward.
Yeah, I think the whole thing with them being so reliant on the threes is it gets tiring to watch them. Like I texted you last night, we were watching this game, and at one point I said to myself, man, they literally just don't have offensive flow. Like if you watch Jazz basketball even if you just watch a quarter of Jazz basketball randomly, you'll notice that they don't run offensive sets. It's literally, okay, Donovan's going to bring the ball up or Conley's going to bring the ball up, okay? Now, if Conley brings the ball up, what are we going to do? We're going to pass the ball to the corner. It's going to come back to the top. We're going to swing it around. We're going to get to 10 seconds in the shot clock. Then we're going to play pick and roll. I mean, that's literally their offense. Like, that's all they do. And like last night I saw the Knicks running sets. I mean, obviously the other teams in the West run a lot of sets. You know, they have plays that are set plays that they run when they need to get a basket that gets them a really, really high-quality look. And to me, that's fascinating because you're a team that does rely so much on the three, and it begs the question, hey, like, you know, is that because they don't run a lot of sets? Is not running sets an intentional choice that they're making? Because to me, if that's a choice you're making, you would only do that if you had really superior talent on the floor that you wanted to, like if you're the Nets, right? Like you can afford not to run sets because you have three of the best, individual scorers the game's ever seen, regardless of what you think of them off the floor, because I'm not a Kyrie guy, but he is one of the best scorers the game's ever seen. And so with the Jazz, I'm left thinking, okay, well, you don't have Kyrie and Kevin Durant and James Harden. You have Donovan Mitchell, who is an elite basketball player. You have Rudy Gobert playing in the middle, and then you've got a bunch of role players. So how does that work? How are we in a place where we're not running sets and getting really high-quality looks and creating those for guys like Donovan, guys like Conley? It's just it's really surprising to me, frankly. After I noticed that, I was like, man, like, why are they just playing pick and roll? Why are we not, like, running offense? I was really surprised by that.
Because I don't know if this is such an odd league right now. I don't even know how you describe, if you watch the NBA as much as I do, and I think we do, if you watch as much NBA basketball as we do, you've seen the game completely change, in my opinion, over the last 3 years. And now you're seeing teams abandon sets in offense to shoot the three. And I don't think it's good for the game. I don't. And I think it's turning guys like Donovan Mitchell into, instead of, let's call it a three-dimensional player, Donovan Mitchell's a two-dimensional player. It eliminates almost entirely the mid-range game, and it means you either go to the basket or you shoot a three. And that's all five guys on the floor, which, again, not to belabor this point, but this is why Rudy Gobert is not a $200 million player, right? This is why you don't pay that guy $40 million a year. We saw last night that there are long stretches where Rudy Gobert does not fit in against Julius Randle, Robinson, Barrett, like that lineup of forwards/guards that are out there all together.
Ultra athletic, lengthy players.
Yeah, and you look at the young and up and coming teams. I mean, you only need to point to your Golden State Warriors and James Wiseman. He'll figure it out. But if you look at the better teams, it's all guys that are big that can shoot. Again, who's probably the best center in the Western Conference?
A lot of people will say it's Jokic.
As a pure center, yeah, sure.
Yeah, as a pure center.
AD in LA? What does he do? I mean, he's a 4-5 guy,
yeah,
right?
He's kind of a hybrid. It really depends on the matchup. So, I mean, the way I like to phrase this question is who's the best big in the West? Because because of the way the league is played, we don't really have centers anymore. We have big men, on the floor because so many teams are running small. So, yeah, I mean, best big man in the West is definitely Anthony Davis. If you look at it from the perspective of, hey, who's the best player who plays the five every, like, night in and night out, I'd have to say it's Jokic.
Yeah, probably. I mean, because of his versatility.
I think
it should be Porzingis, if we're being honest, but he just has never developed.
I think it will be Wiseman in a couple years. I do, because I think Wiseman's incredibly athletic and he has the size to play the 5.
Eat fettuccine every day.
Yeah, dude.
Because homeboy's got to put on some weight. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's my biggest concern for the Jazz. When you get down to the end of this and you're playing the Clippers, Zubats is not going to be on the floor.
No.
I mean, you're playing the Lakers. It's going to be Anthony Davis and Trez Harrell on the floor. How does Rudy Gobert fit into any of that?
Plus LeBron.
Well, yeah, that goes without saying.
But I'm just saying, like, if you think about, this is why I say, like, and Jazz fans hate it. But if you look at the matchup for the Jazz versus, let's say, the Lakers in what would be a Western Conference Finals matchup, because the Lakers are going to be the 1 seed, I just don't see how the Jazz compete with the Lakers. Because the Lakers just have so much talent. Like, Trez Harrell and AD alone are going to be a problem for the Jazz. Let alone you putting Anthony Davis in there. Let alone putting Schroeder in the mix. Those are all guys that can get theirs.
I think has been a very underrated. Dennis Schroeder has been one of the most underrated acquisitions of the offseason in this league.
Yeah.
And I think he's earned every dollar and every ounce of trust and faith that they've put into him. And that's why they're elite. Because with all due respect, they're not trying to decide between Royce O'Neal and Joe Ingles, right? They're not trying to decide if Niang has any minutes tonight or how. Like, that's not. They're trying to figure out how they get everybody involved.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out how to bring in a guy like Cantavius Caldwell-Pope, who has become a real contributor for that team, and is really, if we're being honest about it, Cantavius is the only reason they have an NBA championship, because he got hot.
Yeah.
And he was able to close. I mean, the role players will always define success. In the NBA, it's always going to be the role players. Teams like the Lakers and Clippers have them. Love them or hate them, a guy like Pat Beverly makes all the difference in the world.
Lou Williams?
Yeah, makes all the difference in the world. I look at the Brooklyn Nets and I look at a guy like Joe Harris, who is much better than a role player. But when you have, a ball hog like Kyrie, and you have guys like James Harden and Kevin Durant who need the ball, frankly, because they're elite scorers in the entire world, Joe Harris is going to be a role player. And boy, is he a hell of a role player.
And he's fine with it, too, and that's the thing.
He buys into it.
Yeah,
he absolutely buys into it.
Yeah.
And I think you're exactly right about that. And I think that's where teams get separated in this league. And so if we're talking about whether it's the top of the Eastern Conference or the top of the Western Conference, what's the difference in the East? I look at guys like the Philadelphia 76ers. Ben Simmons is a role player on that team.
Yeah, and they're an average team, bro.
Yeah, their guy is Joel Embiid, without question. I mean, I look at Boston, they don't have a superstar because Jason Tatum is not broken out. And I know that everybody's talking about Jaylen Brown this year and the offensive production he's putting up. He's not a superstar, right? I look at teams like Boston who cut loose of a Kyrie Irving. Well, that was Kyrie's fault. Okay. I look at the fact that they cut loose of a Gordon Hayward. And now Gordon Hayward, because he's on the ball like he was, by the way, in Utah, he had the ball most of the time. Gordon Hayward's turning into an elite scorer again.
Yeah, he's finally putting up numbers. I mean, there was a stretch there that was like really, really bad, and now I don't know what changed for him, but he's definitely producing now.
Yeah, and I just think the Jazz don't have that. It is truly Donovan Mitchell and everybody else.
Yep.
And when you're paying a guy, and I hate to keep going back to what a guy is paid because I think you're worth what you can get. And Rudy Gobert got $200 million and $41 a year. And that was a mistake. And it is, and I know it's probably tiring for Jazz fans to hear me say this because I hear about it on Twitter all the time. You start compounding mistakes with other mistakes. That's how you end up in mediocrity. And when you look at all those draft picks that went by the boards, when you look at the missed opportunities, why are you not hounding the Washington Wizards to make a Bradley Beal trade right now? Why are you not doing everything you can do to acquire an elite scorer to play alongside the only elite scorer you have in Donovan Mitchell? Why are you not? Instead, you're focused on paying Rudy Gobert because what the optics of letting him go would be bad for you. Well, I'm telling you that at some point you got to go and get a Bradley Beal. Whether you want to or not, you have to, or you're just going to be who you've always been, which is in the post, LHM era, you have not really been a significant threat in the Western Conference. You've been difficult. There's no doubt there have been times where most teams don't want to run into the Jazz, but if we're really truth-telling on the Jazz, this team needs to be bold. They need to flop it on the freaking counter and say, measure it, because we just went and got Bradley Beal. That's what this team needs, and I don't know that they're ever going to be there.
No, I completely agree. 100%.
Because until you are, and this is one of those things that I'm sure also pisses people off, until you are, you're not. Until you are, you're never going to. Until you do it, you've never done it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So it's this whole thing where that's never been who the Jazz are.
No, they've always been a conservative, just going to scrape by kind of team.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I could go back to Stockton and Malone in the NBA Finals. What beat you in the NBA Finals? Because it wasn't Stockton and Malone.
Superior talent.
Superior talent and depth of talent beat you in the NBA Finals. It wasn't Hornacek. It turns out that, by the way, guys like Steve Kerr, guys like Bobby Hansen, guys like John Paxson and Horace Grant are where Michael Jordan's a GOAT. It's guys like, if you look at Kobe Bryant, sure, Kobe and Pau, Kobe and Shaq, absolutely. But you had a ton of guys that played roles on those teams that made a huge difference. That's what you don't think about. And so the struggle and what's real is, why do you think Horace Grant was a champion with the Lakers? Because he was a champion with the Bulls, and Phil Jackson wanted players who won.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's not accidental.
And Jazz don't have any of those players, by the way.
Well, they don't have the Jazz have a bunch of glue guys.
Yeah.
If you had three real studs, like if you had Donovan Mitchell in any of your draft, if you had drafted Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell and they were playing next to each other, guys like Mike Conley are fine. Those guys now fit in because they're not expected to score. If Mike Conley doesn't give you numbers, you're going to struggle. Because then again, if Bogdanovich, who is inconsistent, doesn't give you numbers, you're going to struggle. If Royce O'Neal doesn't keep you within arm's length of the Knicks last night, you'd have lost that game. If Austin Rivers wasn't a complete tool bag playing for the Knicks, who scores 25 in the first half, and then literally didn't even come out of the locker room with a uniform on.
Wet like on book.
Right? Like, he was on fire in the first half.
And then what happened? Nothing.
Anybody seen Austin Rivers? Like, where did he go?
Cock-a-doodle-doo.
Right? Like, good morning. I don't know. Anyway, I'm really passionate about this in the NBA.
Yeah.
You have got roster construction is the number one fatality in the NBA.
Yeah, totally. It separates the elite teams from even the very good teams. 100%.
Portland is the exact example of this.
They've been sitting in the same position for over a decade now, wasting Dame and CJ. It's just the truth. That's what they've been doing.
At some point, you got to break those two up.
And by the way, how pissed off are Jazz fans going to be when we're having this conversation 5 years from now? Because we all know it's going to happen. In my opinion, it's going to happen unless something drastically changes.
Wait. Now that you've hit the subscribe button on YouTube, search it, The Monty Show, Monty, The Monty Show, and hit subscribe. You have a new owner that's young, a billionaire, dynamic, wants to win.
It's what we hear everywhere, though.
Owns the arena. Well, but I think if you look at, it's easier said than done. Is he going to be a Steve Ballmer who goes and gets Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and expects a championship only to fall apart because they have no chemistry? Probably not. But is this new owner a guy that'll go out and, again, flop it on the counter and tell him to measure it? And, hey, look, I just went and got Damian Lillard. I just went and got Bradley Beal. I just went and got C.J. McCallum.
Can you measure it?
I mean, seriously. Like, as the new owner of the Jazz, are you going to just remain where they've always been? Or are you going to go and make a difference in supposedly this was a dream of yours? And, okay, well, are you just going to continue,
Yeah.
Are you going to dream or are you going to fantasize?
Yeah, I mean, are you going to do something about it? Because I have no faith that they will do something about it. They're going to have to prove that. Because at the end of the day, what we always hear is, they sold the team and it's a new owner, and he was wearing a jersey as a kid, and he's got this great story, and then he shows up and he started counting nickels instead of counting championships. You know what I mean? And so that's why I say I know I'm the pessimist about the Jazz, but I'm not going to get my hopes up until they show me, hey, we're going to take this seriously. And by the way, I'd have no problem if they just, hung out this season and let this roster be what it is and then got ultra aggressive in the offseason and did something about it then. I totally get it. You got to wait some time with the Rudy contract. Like, you're pretty much not in a place where you can do anything like right here today. So I would get it.
I would do everything right now today that I could do to trade for Bradley Beal.
Yeah, totally.
I would. If we've learned anything by the John Wall trade to the Rockets, there's a problem in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that is. I don't know how you fix that. There's a problem in Washington.
Yep.
And if I am any team that's on the cusp, if I am any team that is good, not great.
You think the Heat aren't trying to get Bradley Beal?
I think, if I'm the Heat, especially in the East. The West is, but here's the other theory here. The West is open for business, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The Lakers are going to be tired.
Right. They are tired. They're showing signs of being tired.
The West is open for business. So if I am middle-tier teams,
mm-hmm.
if I am, but what do the Nuggets really need?
They need one more. They don't have enough.
I think they need a killer.
Yeah. Well, Bradley Beal's a killer.
If you put Bradley Beal with Jokic and Jamal Murray, does that work?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it does work. I think the only reason that there'd be any questions about that is because Jamal Murray, frankly, because he doesn't have Gary Harris is a nice little player, but he's not a wing scorer the same way Bradley Beal is.
I would agree.
If Bradley Beal was on the wing, you tell me that team wouldn't be much better. They'd have much more offensive flow. It's really a night and day difference. Think about what happened with the Jazz or what happened with the Nets when Kyrie came back. Before Kyrie was playing, they had all that flow, right?
Yes.
And they had a nice chemistry because DeAndre Jordan is a low-key center. You've got KD and Harden, and then Joe Harris is in the corner. And so when you look at the Nuggets as an example, you've got Jokic in the middle, who you rely on far too much, but he gives you numbers. He plays at a really high level. You've got Jamal Murray running point, and then you've got Gary Harris who plays sometimes. So I think
he plays sometimes. He's making $20 million.
But I'm just telling you, he's been hurt. He's been doing things, and so then you've got the guy that we're not talking about with the Nuggets is Michael Porter Jr. The guy needs to develop. He needs to show up. It's time.
And he is.
Well,
he's contributing. It's just a matter of, I don't know. They need one more. The problem is they're another team that has not exactly wowed you with their cap management.
I look at the Nuggets. I look at the Blazers.
But the Blazers are, and again, who are you willing to trade? If you're the Portland Trailblazers, who are you willing to trade? Because you're out of money.
Yeah.
You're out of money. And you look at, I actually think Damian Lillard's on a value contract at $32 million a year.
He is.
Right?
He'd be an MVP candidate in a different market.
He's on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah.
Right? He's not getting any younger. Let's be honest.
Yeah, they've wasted his prime. I know that sounds harsh, but that's what's happened.
Yeah. And I think I look at the rest of their money. Nurkic is making 13, Covington's making 12, and Rodney Hood's making 10. Nobody else
role players.
And a bunch of role players.
Same issue the Jazz have.
So they've got $60 million and 45% of their cap tied up in two guys.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh wait, the Jazz have that too.
The exact same thing. But it's worse than that for the Jazz. It's worse than that for the Jazz because you're also paying big money to Ingles, Clarkson, Bogdanovich, on top of Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley are the two big guys that are paid on that team.
Yeah.
Notice I have not said Donovan Mitchell yet. And his extension's coming, obviously. I think he signed, $150, $60 million deal.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, Mike Conley's going to be a free agent. That's a tradable contract. Go get Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying you have the flexibility to do that now.
I would love it. I mean, if they went out and got Bradley Beal, that drastically changes the conversation of where the Jazz are at and what they could do this season right now.
Man, paying Bogdanovich $17 million a year.
Yeah.
He just is not a guy. I don't know, man. I mean, you're essentially what would be swapping Beal for Bogdanovich.
Which is an upgrade for sure.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't think they'll do it. If I look at the rest of the teams around this league, and I think you're more willing and more likely to see, guys like Bradley Beal wind up out west because they don't want to trade him.
Right.
And my God, I look at the Wizards cap. Jesus.
What cap?
$41 million to Russell Westbrook.
Nah, I'm fine.
And they owe him $92 million.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Oh, my God. That's why I say, Bertans, everybody was all boned over Bertans. He's making $15 million to make a couple of threes every night.
It's a nice living, bro.
We're in the wrong line of work. And who's the best team in the NBA right now? It's got to be the Lakers, right?
It's the Lakers, yeah.
So if you look at the Lakers cap situation, this is the beauty of the Lakers. Mm-hmm. And maybe this is...
They got some guy called Rob Pelinka who's running their cap over there.
Well, I mean, you're looking at 52% of their cap is tied up in Anthony Davis and LeBron James.
But the difference is those are Hall of Fame players.
Yes, those are two top elite players.
Right.
And I look at the rest of their roster. Dennis Schroeder's making $16 million on a free agent deal.
Justifiable contract. He's earning it.
KCP, $12 million.
A little high, in my opinion, but fine.
But he's a glue guy. Montrezl Harrell's only making $9.2 million.
That's a great contract.
And he's going to be a free agent.
And by the way, the other thing that we're not talking about in this conversation is guys want to go and play with LeBron.
Yeah.
And it's not and I don't mean that as an indictment on Donovan. I'm just saying that what's helping the Lakers here is that guys do want to go and play with LeBron. And so they're willing to take less money because they know they're going to get to the finals.
I just look at the rest of their cap. Marc Gasol, Alex Caruso. You don't owe these guys any money.
Nope.
Kyle Kuzma, you only owe him $39 million. Hey, you want to give me Bradley Beal? Here's
Totally.
Here's Kuz.
Totally.
By the way, if I need to throw in a KCP, here's KCP.
Totally.
Right? Like the Lakers, that's the difference. You look at the Lakers cap, they have flexibility because they have two guys who every single night perform like superstars.
Cold-blooded, clean, methodical, and thorough.
Every single night out of
Every
LeBron
night,
and
baby.
AD.
Let's go.
Right? I mean, that's the difference.